Jose Morales, with all the people talking about America's fiscal cliff and Europe falling apart, it seems though people are forgetting about the real big story, perhaps of this century, is the fact that emerging market consumers are buying more than ever. Tell me about it.
Well, we believe that powerful socioeconomic trends that are in the emerging markets currently will lead to continued growth in the emerging market middle class. This means a rise in disposable incomes, a rise in overall general consumption as individuals in emerging markets look to, improve their standards of living.
Well, right now everybody's looking towards China. So tell me about the pillars that are really building up the consumer in China. What are they buying, for example?
Well, in China, it's an interesting story because, the government there actually has, as part of its 5-year plan, a focus on increasing consumption as a key driver of their economy. So, for us, China overall is one of the key parts of this consumption story in terms of the number of new consumers that are going to be coming out of the emerging markets in general. So it's a very important long-term story for us. When you look at urbanization, for example, one of the key drivers for the overall consumer story throughout emerging markets, right now China is at about 50% urbanization rates. And there's a direct relationship between urbanization and economic activity. So the more a country becomes urbanized, the higher the per capita GDP rises. So clearly for China, that's one of the key drivers, as it is for the overall consumption story in emerging markets.
And China seems to be taking a lot of other regions with it. For example, as prices rise in China, you're seeing the overflow of business and factories move into places like Indonesia and Vietnam and the Philippines, right?
That's correct. And I think that's partly due to the increased competitiveness of a lot of these other countries in the rest of Asia. But there's another important factor in the overall consumer story, and that's the population demographics, where generally populations in emerging markets and in some of these key Eastern Asian countries that you mentioned are much younger than elsewhere in emerging markets as well as compared to the developed world. And what this provides for is a young, very productive workforce. So we're talking about populations that are young, have high working age ratios, and basically what that leads to is sustainable economic growth. What's also important about this is that younger people tend to consume more, they tend to shop more. And so when you're looking at these young populations, again with a high working age ratio, you're looking at a couple of decades before they're even near their peak earnings age, and therefore their peak consumption years.
And one of the things that we learned from the Arab Spring is that they're on the internet. They are aware of technology. They want the technology that Americans are currently using. So why don't you talk about that region of the world? I know you watch Turkey fairly closely.
Yeah, look, again, it goes back to the youth of these populations, and again, it goes to the how that links up to the way that we define as well consumption. We define it as basically the collective force of general rise in consumption, and that includes things like media, and the internet is a very important part of that. And so places not just like Turkey, but Indonesia as well, very, very focused on whether it's obviously the social websites, but also even going towards shopping and doing a lot more on the internet than ever before.
And finally, as an investor, how can somebody take advantage of this? How are you taking advantage of this trend?
Yeah, again, for us, we defined the consumer theme quite broadly. So I think it goes beyond just, for example, a retail store or mobile telephone companies. Those are part of the story, but for us, I think that as the middle class grows, as people's disposable incomes rise, they're going to want to take better care of themselves. For us, healthcare is an important part of this. Other services as well. The wealthier people become, the more they want to travel. So there's areas in travel which we're finding very interesting investment opportunities in as well. Financial products, so housing. Home ownership is increasing, and therefore mortgages, as they become developed, because that is something that's still kind of underdeveloped, but the more that they become developed, that becomes also part of this whole consumer story as well.